Hello, everybody. Welcome to your annual evaluation recalibration activity. These annual recalibration activity tasks are required by RIDE and for all certified evaluators in order to maintain your certification. But over the years, they have changed a bit for us. We have moved from face-to-face meetings to online tasks with a face-to-face debrief to a self-paced overview of our process, which we're doing now, to give you an overview of the new targeted evaluation system. This has been a hectic year, trying to get kids back into the buildings that haven't been here for a while, a lot of new curriculum. And we know that discussion about the evaluation process has been a valuable aspect to your recalibration exercises in the past, but our varied schedules has made that difficult to arrange this year. Therefore, we'll be doing a self-paced activity this year. However, the resources that you need are still on the PACE page in Aspen, and I'm available at any time via email, phone calls, or whatever to assist and answer questions. I'm more than willing to come to your building and meet with you as well. So this activity you accessed through a Google form, and when you finish watching this short presentation, there will be a place for you to ask questions. Please ask any questions that you need clarification on. I will then take all of your questions, put them together by common areas, and write an answer for them, and I will get that out to you as soon as I possibly can, hopefully within a few days of when this survey has closed. So the full evaluation rubric really hasn't changed. Everything there is exactly the same. We're not changing any of those procedures. The full evaluation rubric is going to be used by our teachers, related service providers, and TOSAs who are non-tenured, those that have changed certifications during TAP over the last few months, or teachers, related service providers, and TOSAs who are rated as ineffective or developing. All the timelines remain in effect as outlined in the handbook, and I've linked that handbook there so that when you pull this up from PACE, you'll be able to see the handbook. The handbook was updated in June of 2021 just to add in another addendum for the targeted evaluation. And just as a reminder, our non-tenured folks are using the full rubric for 3 years. They use it for 2 years if they are bringing tenure from another district forward to this district, so then it's only 2 years. And teachers earn tenure by having either 3 consecutive evaluations or 2 consecutive evaluations if they were tenured elsewhere. These are the full rubrics attached to this, so this is like one-stop shopping when you are finished looking at this and find this again in PACE. So the full rubric for the 35 elements for educators, related service providers, and TOSAs are here. So now let's talk about the targeted evaluation. The targeted evaluation is for our highly effective and effective educators, related service providers, and TOSAs. So anybody that is rated highly effective or effective on their last evaluation. There is a grid attached to this PowerPoint of what that looks like, and I'm going to go over that in just a minute. But there are 10 elements overall instead of 35, and they do go across all 4 standards. Those in the targeted evaluation process still follow all the same timelines for PGGs, 3.5, full lesson planning and lesson observations, and having conferences. So the only thing that's different is that they're being rated on 10 elements versus 35. Now, the rationale for this is that the DEC met last spring and discussed the process that we used last year during COVID and considered the idea of a targeted evaluation for our highly effective and effective faculties, similar to the idea that other innovation districts have done. The discussion centered around the high priority elements in each of the 4 standards, and that the targeted process needed to include a sampling from all 4 standards. Additionally, due to RIDE requirements, 3.5 had to be one of the elements. Discussion with the DEC members, who include administrators, teachers, a TOSA, and a related service provider, resulted in the 10 elements that were chosen that are fairly evenly spread out over the 4 elements and maintain key elements of the lesson plan, the PGG, and 3.5. So let's look at the targeted eval. So this is standard 1, and you can see purple going down this grid will be teacher, pink is related service provider, blue is TOSA. So in standard 1, you'll see that there are 3 elements for all categories, and they are fairly similar, but because our roles are different in these 3 areas, they are somewhat adjusted. but there are 3 elements for each one. So for example, teachers are doing 1.1b, 1.2, 1.3a, and so on and so forth. In standard 2, they're exactly the same. Everybody's doing 2.2, 2.2b for our teachers and related service providers, and just 2.2 because there is no 2.1 or A or B for our TOSAs. So that's the same across all. In standard 3, everybody has 3 elements to do as well. Again, these are a little bit different. They're still 3 elements, but you can see glaringly that 3.5 is only under teachers and related service providers. There is no 3.5 on a TOSA rubric because TOSAs don't work directly with students. But there are still 3 elements across the board for each one to provide equity here. And then finally, standard 4 has got 4.1, which is reflecting on practice or reflecting on instruction, and 4.4, which is their PGG. The approval of the PGG is 4.4b. The attainment of the PGG is 4.4c. So that's exactly the same for all 3 groups. Now, what we did for you, and I have to give Derek Gustafson credit for this because he did the educator one, gave me the great idea, and then I did the related service provider and TOSA ones. But we created target evaluation rubrics that are just the 10 elements. So the teachers and you do not have to flip through a full rubric to find the elements that you're being rated on for the targeted evaluation. So when you click on these are just the 10 elements in each of these categories that these targeted folks are going to be evaluated on. So once again, thanks to Derek for that idea. Some other considerations for the targeted evaluation is that their PGG we've always asked that a PGG be aligned to standards 2 or 3, but, and they can still do that for the targeted eval, but in addition this year, they can align their PGG to 1.3a if they're a teacher, because 1.3a really talks about the pedagogy of a curriculum and understanding the lesson components. And so because so many people are doing new curriculum, 1.3a is really a good one for a PGG in order to spend a whole lot of time delving into their new curriculum, learning the pedagogy that might be slightly different within that curriculum, some of the new ideas, some of the new strategies, and clearly some of the new content. So that would be an appropriate one. Teachers do have to complete a full lesson plan, not just the little components that are part of the standard. They'll be rated on just certain components of the lesson plan, but they're still going to write a full lesson plan. And they need to do that in order to have a rich discussion during your pre-observation conference. The teacher and the evaluator need to be able to discuss that lesson as a whole to understand the contents of the element that's being rated. And also, if you're in a secondary level and there's an 84-minute block, to determine where in that 84-minute block you want to observe. Is it the beginning, middle, or end? But you want to be able to see the lesson as a totality because you will not be able to stay there for 84 minutes, clearly. The remainder of the CPS guidelines still are accurate. Timelines, number of conferences, absolutely everything in the handbook still remains the same. Really, the only thing we're adjusting here is the number of elements being assessed. Now, this question has come up a lot about the Aspen workflow and how this is going to work with a targeted evaluation. So Kim McNally is working her magic and is updating the Aspen workflow. It's going to look exactly the same from what I'm told. However, it will calculate the final effectiveness rating based on the scores entered and just average those. So empty boxes will just be ignored. So if you are using the full evaluation and you have entered evidence into all 35 rubric elements, it will average the 35 and generate the final effectiveness rating. If you're only using the targeted evaluation on 10 elements and you fill in the evidence in those 10 elements, it will calculate an average of just those 10. In the past, something empty would have been counted as a 0, so that won't happen anymore. It's just not applicable. The rest of this is really pretty much the same because, again, really all we're doing is changing the number of elements, not the process. So you're still going to have a pre-observation conference. You're going to have the same discussions about, the makeup of the class, what the lesson is going to be, student expectations. You're going to have your observation. And just a note about 3.5 during your observation. 3.5 is about formal and summative assessment. If you are in a class and you're observing and you see evidence of, say, an exit ticket or a little Kahoot to assess where kids are, you can capture that evidence and add that into 3.5 as evidence of assessment that you saw happening in a classroom. And then that could be additional evidence along with the 3.5 worksheet that they submit to you. So you don't specifically have to find that evidence, but it may occur. You may find it. You may see it when you're in a classroom, and you certainly should capture that and add that in. Post-op observations are the same. So it's a check-in to discuss the student learning. It's an authentic dialogue about that lesson, how to go. Do you think it was successful? Were there things that the teacher may say, if I were doing this again, I might tweak this? And for you, having the rubric open and in front of you so that you can use the language of the rubric and having those discussions about the parts of the elements that they're being rated on for the lesson is really important. And then lastly is the summative conference. That's at the end of the evaluation cycle. So at the end of the semester or at the end of the year. And then you do need to talk about the context of all the rubric language. Focus on 3.5, but don't limit it to 3.5. You now want to have a conversation about, how the kids are doing, how their instructional strategies increased student progress. And the educator can opt to provide sample evidence, such as student work samples, but they don't really have to. They can talk about it with you to make it easier on everybody. A rating on 3.5 will be determined, just averaged in with the other 34 elements, or 10 elements if it's the targeted evaluation. So the same thing. This is the element 3.5 worksheet. You've all seen it and love it, I'm sure, but there is a screencast here that's a few minutes long. So if you want, your teachers are asking you a lot of questions about 3.5 and how they do it. A lot of them have been emailing me, but you can direct them to the PACE website to listen to this screencast. It's right there. It gives them all they need to know about the 3.5. It's about 9 minutes. Again, documenting 3.5 in Aspen. What they fill out, your teachers are filling out, is just a Google form that they should share with you so that you can see it from the beginning to the middle to the end. And then at the end, when they have finished it, you just, as the evaluator, copy and paste it and add it into 3.5 in the Aspen workflow. Our educators can't upload it to Aspen because it's considered evidence, and only evaluators put evidence into the workflow. So you have to just copy and paste that worksheet and put it into Aspen. Teachers cannot do that for you. And then finally, we get to the final effectiveness rating. So clearly the final effectiveness rating for those on the full rubric with 35 elements will be a rating or an average of their 35 elements, and each element being 1/35. And for the folks on the targeted element rubric, they have 10 elements. They'll be rated on an average of 10. So each one is worth 1/10 of their score. Finally, here's some updated information for you, some resources. I just put them all here. These are all on the PACE website already, but if you just wanted to open and do one-stop shopping, that's what this is for. So that's all there. And lastly, if you have any further questions, anything else that you need help with, you need a clarifying piece of information, just email me or call my office, and I'll be glad to help any way I can through email, phone, or I can even come out to your building. Thanks for listening. Sorry it was a little drawn out, but it was under like 14 minutes. So thanks. Let me know if you have any questions.